delegates from UK and India, and learned participants. Good afternoon to all of you. I'm really privileged to be in the panel, which is being chaired by Professor Sukhdev Thorat, former chairman of the UGC, and I got the opportunity to work with him for 5 years. And in my presentation also, whatever I would be making, there are certain programs which were initiated under his leadership. So thank you, sir, for being the chair for this session. We have been discussing since yesterday about the quality assurance. So being UGC being the regulatory authority, so I'll give you the quality assurance in higher education UGC perspective. As we all know that UGC is a statutory body which was established in 1956 by an act of parliament. Okay. And the main mandate which was given to UGC is that UGC, in consultation with universities or other bodies concerned, take all such steps as it may think fit for the promotion and coordination of university education and for determination and maintenance of standards of teaching, examination, and research in universities. So this was a basic mandate. Besides this, disbursement of grant was also given to the UGC. Now, when the UGC was being established, if we look into the statistics of the higher education institution at that particular time, there were hardly 30 universities, and today we have around 700 degree awarding institutions. And the number of colleges were only 695, and in 2011-12 we have around 35,539 colleges which are affiliated to the different universities. Coming to the various types of the universities, as Professor Ranganath has made in his presentation yesterday, that Indian higher education system is a complex system, it is a heterogeneous system, and it is a diverse system, and it is one of the largest system of the country. We have all types of organization. We have central government funded organization, we have state government funded organization, we have private universities, we have deemed to be universities which are notified by the MHRD, and we have institution of national importance. So if we look into the different types of the universities, within those also we have again the diversification. We have a single faculty university, we have the medical universities, we have the technical universities. So all sorts of types of institutions are there. And if we look into the colleges also, again we have a different types of colleges. We have affiliating colleges, constituent colleges, autonomous colleges, and so on and so forth. So after looking at the size of the higher education system in the country, so major concerns for governing these higher education system, these are regulations, governance, access, equity, excellence, funding, and quality. So I would be taking the quality aspect in my further presentation. Now let us see what is the quality. Mr. Amit Shukla also mentioned in one of his slides how we perceive the quality. As far as we UGC are concerned, quality itself is an elusive concept and attributes of values which cannot be easily measured or quantified. This we discussed in our morning session also when we were discussing that out-based type of learning. Quality, how individual perceive the quality. As we all know that education creates capacity, it is accepted that quality creates potential to compete. Until unless we have quality, we won't be able to compete at the global market. Quality is getting defined as doing ordinary things in an extraordinary way. It is end product of institutional response to the students' educational and professional needs, which we discussed in the morning. It is a cumulative product of both human and material resources. It is simply performing better today than what we performed the other day and preparing to perform the best for tomorrow. It is self-sustaining passion with no expiry date. Though we give the accreditation for 5 years and all that, Professor Ranganath also mentioned that we need to sustain the quality which we have earned. It is accountability and efficiency at all levels. So we can say quality is never an accident. It is always the result of intelligent efforts. Now, if we look into the quality in the higher education context, what is in higher education? It is meeting expectation and requirements through consistent performance in teaching and research. Again, quality is also a way of brand building exercise for institutions with long-term perspective in a competitive global environment. We always look for, oh, you are graduate from IIT, from IIM, from Hyderabad University, from JNU. So in a way, we give them the brand building exercise. Now, how in the UGC, what are the various mechanisms for the quality assurance? I would say I have divided it into the 3 parts. UGC, first of all, we frame the various regulation on different aspects of the regulation, aspects of the education. That is the first part to maintain the quality assurance. Second is UGC has established an autonomous organization, National Assessment and Accreditation Council, for assessment and accreditation of higher education institution. This was established in 1994, and Professor Ranganath has given the detailed activities and the procedure and all other things about this NAC. And the third is that, as Mr. Shukla was saying, that we have various programs for promoting quality and excellence in higher education. So I will be taking one by one what we have done in all these 3 aspects. Coming to UGC regulations, we can divide this UGC regulation broadly in 3 categories. First is the regulation for fitness of higher education institution for grant. As again, I'll quote Mr. Shukla, we have a clause that is 12B institutions. Every institution has to reach up to certain level in terms of physical infrastructure, in terms of academic programs, in terms of the faculty. Then only these institutions become eligible to receive the financial support from the UGC. That means once a institution is established, they have to reach up to a certain level, which is one way of maintaining the standard of a particular institution. Second regulation which we normally frame is the regulation for minimum standards of instruction. Like what should be the duration of the course, what should be the teaching hours, what should be the course, like number of teaching days, what should be the examination system. So we have framed certain regulation in terms of minimum standards of instruction. And third is that regulations for minimum qualification for appointment of teachers and their pay scale. This is also being done. Across all institutions, across all the country, they have to have the teachers when they go for the appointment, either they should be net qualified or they should have the PhD degree. Even for their promotion policy, we have the different parameters for the promotion. So these are the basically 3 types of the regulations in a broader sense, which UGC frame for maintaining a standard up to certain level, the quality of education. Recently, we have issued certain regulations. One of the important regulation which when Professor Thorat was the chairman was notified, that was the UGC minimum standard and procedure for award of MPhil and PhD degree regulations. Few days back, it was in a big news that Meghalaya University has awarded 400 PhD students in a year. How they are doing it, we don't know. So we have framed these regulations in which we have given what should be the procedure for the admission. Every institution should have some entrance examination. There should be some coursework. How many individual professor or the teacher can guide the PhD students. So these are the various parameters which has been included in the UGC regulations for the award of MPhil and PhD degree. We have also recently issued the UGC regulations for the deemed to be university status. Any institution which is performing excellent in a particular area get the deemed to be university status. But to become a deemed to be university status, they have to fulfill certain conditions which we have laid down in our regulation, and accreditation is one of such criteria. Then other regulations also we have notified. And recently in January, we have notified this UGC Mandatory Assessment and Accreditation of Higher Education Institution Regulation 2012. These were notified in January, and they were put on our website on 3rd of March, and they become operational from the day it has been notified. Now, second aspect was, first thing I have covered, that is the UGC regulation. Second was the National Assessment and Accreditation Council. As I told you, that it is an autonomous body, but it has been established by the UGC under a specific provision in the UGC Act. And mandate which is given to the NAC is to assess and accreditate the higher education institution. As we know, till recently, this assessment and accreditation was voluntary till we notified these regulations. And as of March 2013, 5,294 institution has been accredited by NAC, out of which 175 are the universities and colleges are 5,119. That means hardly 17% of the 24% of the eligible universities have been accredited, and 17% of the eligible colleges has been accredited. Now, why we have made the regulations mandatory? We thought that it is necessity of making all our institutional fully quality compliant. Quality is best controlled internally but assessed externally for quality assurance. We have discussed about this internal quality. As Professor Ranganath mentioned, that we have established internal quality assurance cell in each and every institution, for which UGC is providing the financial support also. Again, that was initiated when when Professor Thorat was the chairman. And I believe this is being taken up by all the institutions in a very serious manner. And it gives them an internal process of thinking that what is their vision, what is their mission, where they are lacking, how to cope up the weakness, how to further strengthen the strength which the institution has. Then third point is that quality assessment needs to be linked to a system of rewards and disincentives. Mr. Pawan Agarwal did mention that in US there is a reward system, that any US institution after accreditation they get 216 billion for the students' aid. So similarly, we need to have certain parameter where we can have, okay, if you do this thing, you will get these rewards, and if you don't do these things, there would be certain disincentive. And lastly, quality in higher education to be treated holistically. Both teaching and research must be viewed as a key determinant, particularly for the university system. Keeping these points in view, we have come out with the UGC regulations for the mandatory accreditation. Now, coming to the regulation, which of course the details can be seen in the copy of the regulation has been put in your conference kit, but still I would like to emphasize on few points. That these regulations are basically meant for all the universities which has been established by Central Act or by the Provincial or the State Act. All the institutions other than technical institution declared by notification under Section 3 of the UGC Act as a deemed to be universities. All the colleges other than the technical institution, including the autonomous colleges, fall under the category of the mandatory accreditation. Now, what are the objectives which has been set forth for this mandatory accreditation? As we know, that it will accord recognition to quality and excellence of education imparted by all higher education institutions. It will enable the students and other stakeholders to make informed choices with regard to the higher education institution. Otherwise, students will keep on asking their fellow students. Their parents are also worried where we have to admit our students. So it will give, we will have a basic information where we would like to send our children. To facilitate higher education institution to augment quality. To facilitate higher education institution to secure additional funding and other incentives. It will also facilitate higher education institution for international recognition. Because always when we go for the collaboration, we look, okay, are you accredited by NAC? What is the grade which we have got? So it will help the institution to be internationally recognized. To facilitate students achieve learning outcome, which we discussed in the morning. To facilitate higher education institution to achieve effective governance. So these are the few objectives which we have set, which will help the higher education institution when they go for the mandatory accreditation. Now, mandatory accreditation, any institution which has completed two batches of the graduate or 6 years, they have to apply within 6 months to the NAAC for the accreditation process. And the validity is for 5 years. Every institution has to go for the re-accreditation before 6 months before the expiry of their accreditation. Now, what is the duties and obligations of the assessment and accreditation agency? We have mentioned in our regulation that as of now there are 3 accrediting agencies. One is the NAAC, another is the NBA, and the third is the NAB. We have also mentioned any other future accrediting agency which would be established in near future. They will also be called as the accrediting agency. So what are the duties of the accrediting agency? Of course, in yesterday's presentation by Dr. Ranganath, he did mention about what are the duties. I think these are the same, that accrediting agency has to ensure the complete transparency in its operation. That is first and the foremost important aspect. To get the views of students, teacher, and the other stakeholders. Soliciting the views of stakeholders on the self-study report, so that the accuracy of the self-study report can also be seen. To publish the final accreditation results on website along with all the relevant documents. Complete the accreditation process within 6 months. After accreditation, the decision on withdrawal or modification should be taken within 90 days if there is any application received by these accrediting agencies. Now, what are the prerequisites for the accreditation? Higher education institution, as Mr. Shukla also mentioned, they will not be eligible for receiving any financial support if you are not an accrediting institution. Any institution will not be eligible for seeking the deemed to be university status without accreditation, except under the category of the de novo. No university shall be recognized under Section 12B without accreditation. No college shall be recognized under Section 2F without accreditation. So every institution has to go to accreditation first and then come to the UGC for the other processes. Now, we discussed that what is the use of this accreditation. So we have put certain incentive and penalties clauses. Incentive clause, of course, it is written very small that a higher level of funding would be given to these accrediting agency, but we have various schemes in which if you are an accrediting agency, you would be eligible, you will get additional grant and you will get other incentives as well. As far as penalties are concerned, there are too many. Repeat notification under Section 12B, revoking of deemed to be university status, withholding of grant, ineligible for any assistant under any general and the special assistant program, declaring for the purpose of general information to the public. So these are the penalty clauses which we have put in our regulations. Now, we have made the regulation, we have only NAAC, NBA and NAB for making the accreditation as of now. Mr. Shukla has given the roadmap, what are in the pipeline like NARA bill or RUSA. And probably they are going to give authority to the UGC for identifying the accrediting agencies. Now, what are the challenges and road ahead? If we go by the regulations and if we go by the growth of the higher education institution, it is expected that at least 400 universities and 16,000 colleges would be applying for accreditation within 6 months of our notification. Now, what are the challenges which are confronting us? The first and foremost challenge before us is how to strengthen the NAAC in terms of the human resource as well as in terms of the infrastructure. Maybe that UGC, the General Council of the NAAC has already taken a decision that they will have the different branches across the country and which is under consideration of the UGC. So our first thing is the strengthening of NAAC. Second is that, as Secretary Education also mentioned yesterday, identification and establishment of the multiple assessment agency. This is a second point which we have to look into that. Now, another thing is that involving best academician in the peer team. Dr. Ranganath has given a data that for the evaluation of 175 universities and 5,054 colleges, around 2,500 assessors were used, and there were around 1,400 visits. So we have to see that if we have 400 universities and 16,000 colleges, from where are we going to get these assessors, which would be a part of our peer team to visit these institutions. Another challenge could be that we can also think of introducing the technology incentive process, which can also help us in fasting the accrediting process. Next challenge would be quality and consistency of assessment. When we are sending the different teams, we will having the different accrediting agency, how we are going to maintain the quality and consistency in the assessment. The inheritance limitation, again, in the morning also, yesterday also somebody raised this. How can we have the one-size-fit-all methodology? We have a diverse, heterogeneous type of institution. How we can have a one-size-fit-all methodology? And there is no universal methodology for assessment. So these are the challenges before us, which we have to look into that for the accreditation process. Now coming to yesterday also somebody raised that after this accreditation, what next? How we are going to achieve the excellence, how we are going to maintain the quality. As I mentioned in my previous slide, that first is the regulation which we have covered, second is the assessment and accreditation, and the third is that we have various programs in which we promote quality and excellence and promotion of research. I will not give all the details of these schemes. All these information are available on our website. Like we have a program of special assistant program. Right now we have 943 such special assistant program which are working, which are doing excellent teaching and research in a particular thrust area. We have centers with potential for excellence which have been identified in a particular thrust area, and additional grants are given to augment their physical and the human resources. We have universities with potential for excellence, which are 15 in number. We have colleges with potential for excellence, which are 250 in number. We have autonomous college, which has all the freedom to set their curriculum, to have their own admission process, to have their own examination system, which are 427 in number. We have academic staff colleges which provide the training to the freshly recruited teacher orientation program and refresher program to the teachers. Then we have networking centers in basic sciences for training and capacity building. We have established such 9 training center. We have various fellowship programs under the basic scientific research in which we give fellowship to the students who are pursuing the PhD program for the postdoctorate fellowship. We have also come out with electronic repository of the research thesis so that whatever research or whatever the PhD is being done, it should be made available to everyone to see what research is being done by an individual. We have various programs of the research project and research award for the teachers. We have scholarship, fellowship for PhD and postdoctorate. So this is how with various programs and the schemes, we try to maintain the quality and to achieve the excellence. That's all. Thank you.